We've all heard the excuse, the devil made me do it. But what happens when all things point to that actually happening? The Devil on Trial is a new Netflix documentary film that examines murder, spiritual possession, and what happens when those are brought to court. This documentary film explores the first and only time demonic possession has officially been used as a defense in a U.S. murder trial. Through first-hand accounts of alleged devil possession and a shocking murder, this story forces reflection on the fear of the unknown. So we're told this account from the people that actually experienced it. The Glatzel family consisted of a mom, a dad, 3 sons, and a daughter. Now one summer, the youngest brother, David, began to experience some strange happenings and soon began to behave in a manner that suggested something creepy was going on with him, and then affecting the whole household. Now, at one point, famous demonologists, Ed and Lorraine Warren, from, the Conjuring fame, they were brought in with the hopes that they could provide not only answers to the family about what was happening, but also help to put a stop to it. After a series of encounters, many of which are captured in photographs and audio recordings, someone is murdered. And when the case goes to trial, the defense is that the defendant was taken over by a demonic possession and wasn't culpable for their actions. So we get a lot of interviews with the family as they recount the events that led up to the murder. What I appreciate in this is that it's not all prettied up just for the sake of storytelling. There's conflict and distance between the family members. They're not all on the same page in regards to believing everything that went down was supernatural or the result of some malicious spirit. The beginning of the documentary, it's a bit confusing as it narrates to us how David started to hear voices, even feel a presence while helping to clean up a house for his sister and her boyfriend to move into. And it's never totally explained why a malevolent presence was there and why it attached itself to David. But after that, he begins to experience odd shifts in his behavior. And the audio recordings, they paint a creepy visual through David's screams, outbursts, even his voice fluctuating in pitch and tone. It's certainly disturbing to hear, and the film also accompanies the audio with photos taken at the time as the family tries to document what's going on just to provide evidence to the church in case an exorcism is called for. Now, at some point, the Warrens are contacted and they come to visit the family. They'd already received press and notoriety, so this wasn't their first rodeo. And we get to hear them on some of the recordings as well, along with other audio and video recordings as the Warrens just appeared on talk shows and news segments discussing their exploits. Now, you may think of the Warrens as those awesome demon hunters, or you may think of them as complete hoaxes. Either way you approach them, this documentary takes a look at them through that lens. Some of the Glatzels wholeheartedly believe in what the Warrens say and what they recommended. The mom, David, even the middle brother, Alan, they view the demonologists as knowledgeable and trusted experts and are willing to follow their prescribed steps to hopefully rid David of his malevolent entity. Even David's older brother Carl and some authorities, they're skeptical of the Warrens, believing that they are absolute frauds only out to exploit the family for financial gain. There's some pretty convincing evidence that supports their claims, especially as it's recounted how David wouldn't exhibit certain behaviors or traits until after they were suggested by the Warrens. And then, once the trial was underway, the Warrens had a book deal going that gave them massive profit while barely compensating the Glatzel family for their inclusion and focus. But with that being said, the belief that David still holds in the Warrens and his experience, it's also worthy of examining. Some of the things that were happening within the house, they don't get explained away by greed or fraudulent mediums. Now, the story transitions away from David's possession to then focus on the murder that takes place, putting David's sister's boyfriend, Arnie, in the spotlight as the prime suspect. Now, it's intriguing to hear attorneys recount their experiences, especially with the defense, because using something like demonic possession had never been used in a modern court of law as a defensive argument. If they'd gone with temporary insanity, that wouldn't be unheard of. But because of the photographic and audio evidence, the defense believed that they could adequately use it to get Arnie acquitted of the charges. I don't think an equal amount of prominence is given to both portions of this account. Now, a lot of the movie focuses on the Glatzels and David's experience, with anecdotes of the family life and upbringing just as well as their relationships. And while there is some time spent with the trial aspect, it does feel slightly off balance, especially as the narrative shifts away from David Glatzel, who what I had assumed was actually the one to stab and kill the victim, just given all the attention on his supposed possession. Instead, though, because of the facts, David wasn't even a suspect, because apparently Arnie was chosen by the malevolence to become possessed and then capable of evil. Now, it would have been interesting to be in the courtroom to hear all of the arguments, because what's asserted by the oldest brother, and even an investigator, is that Arnie did have a viable motive for the crime. He also had the means and the opportunity, making him appear very guilty. Plus, he had a built-in mechanism for defense. The devil's been wreaking havoc on the family that he's living with, and it latched onto him and made him commit a heinous crime. Now, whether or not you believe Arnie and his claim of what happened to him, the circumstances surrounding David Glatzel and his family, they're certainly strange. Some of the accusations raised by the oldest brother do lend themselves to destroying the notion of possession, but there are still small things that were happening environmentally that really can't be reasoned away, so maybe there was something to it all. The production of this is pretty good, and the storytelling, while a bit confusing in small parts just because of how the narrative plays out, it's told efficiently and it makes good use of its 81 minutes. I appreciate that we're presented with both sides of the story, one that approaches this from a true believer's perspective and the other from an utter skeptic, both using their experiences to inform their stances. The interviews are engaging, with the entire film made all the more captivating thanks to haunting and creeping audio recordings and photos during the demonic outbursts. There's no sex nudity, some profanity, and some violence. Now, as a reminder, I don't give couch ratings to documentaries, but I do recommend checking out The Devil on Trial. It's a creepy tale, and it provides enough on both sides of the argument to create some meaningful discussions. So where do you stand on the Warrens? Do you believe their accounts, or do you think they're frauds? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.